To Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, and of course YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Valentine's Day. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ plus community. We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotshots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Adrianna Tender. Adrianna is a transgender advocate and a healthcare practitioner. She has extensive education and experience in HIV prevention and healthcare that relates to transgender individuals. She currently works at as the program coordinator with Trans Inclusive Group and is the owner of Tender Loving Care Trans Mentoring. She received the Bishop SF Malakani Mahi Transgender Advocate Award in 2019 and has received many other awards. She serves on the National Board of Governors of the Human Rights Campaign and is on the board of directors of the Dolphin Democrats and Black LGBTQ Liberation. She is a member of several civic and political organizations like the NAACP, the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus, and attends Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. Welcome, Adrianna.
Hi. Let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is a founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ Council and My Hollywood Pride, which just held their second annual event in downtown Hollywood. Jeff is returning as co-chair for the upcoming 2023 National LGBTQ Task Force Gala in October. The Task Force events, including the up-and-coming Winter Party Festival in March, have given back more than $3.3 million LGBTQ community organizations in South Florida. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Love who you want to love, and if you can't love them, love yourself.
Or bah humbug.
Yes.
Would be that too.
How's that? Now, let's welcome somebody I love. Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 9 books, including the forthcoming Refrain in Light, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ+ and mainstream publications and websites. His movie review column called Screensaver can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Love you too, Jeff. Love you all. Love you so much. I'm getting all choked up. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight. And
Did I say bah humbug earlier?
Again.
I love you anyway. This evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the Queer News for today, Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Happy Valentine's Day, which just so happens to coincide with National Cream-Filled Chocolates Day,
nice.
as well as National Organ Donor Day. So have a heart or give one.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, right.
Good advice.
Thank you. All right, let's begin by coring up lesbian culture. A new study shows LGBTQ plus poverty dropped during the pandemic, except for lesbians. According to a new report from the Williams Institute at the University of California, Los Angeles, titled LGBT Poverty in the United States, poverty levels among LGBTQ plus Americans decreased sharply during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the community's rate of poverty is still higher than that of straight cisgender people. Researchers analyzed data from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System and the U.S. Census Household Pulse Survey to examine the rates of poverty among LGBT and non-LGBT people during the early days of the pandemic. The Institute found that the proportion of LGBT people experiencing poverty dropped from 23% in 2020 to 17% in 2021. During the same period, poverty declined from 16% to 12% for non-LGBT people. In 2021, poverty decreased for all subpopulations of LGBT people except cisgender lesbians. The most notable declines in poverty from 2020 to 2021 were seen among transgender people and cisgender bisexual women. The poverty rate for cisgender gay men dropped from 13% to 10%, while that for cisgender lesbians rose from 14% to 17%. Cisgender bisexual men had a drop in the poverty rate from 21 to 13%. Interesting news, the report doesn't theorize what was really at play, which is really the most important thing here. But again, first and foremost, I applaud the Williams Institute. It's one of the best institutional metric gauges in America, everything LGBT. Williams Institute at UCLA Law Center is really such a great advocacy of the statistics of our community. The one thing that I think is encouraging is our trans community did better in the reporting of those that report being in poverty. But the issue of women, I'm hoping that there's more follow-up to, because it doesn't really intuitively make sense to me. How would the trans community do better, but cisgender lesbians do worse? But that is the conclusion of the report.
And this is where Susie Orman really needs to step in and talk to her lesbian sisters and get them on the right path.
Yeah, right.
Well, I also think it's, the conversation around the pay equity for LGBTQ people in general, the statistics are still very stark. I looked up today that, LGBTQ people as a whole make 90 cents on the dollar, but as we go through our community, if you are LGBTQ and Black, it's 80 cents on the dollar, and if you are LGBTQ and trans, it's 70 cents. And if you are LGBTQ and trans woman, it's 60 cents on the dollar.
Wow, 30 cents.
Yes. So obviously, passage of the Equality Act and the policies that were passed after COVID, of course, helped lower poverty across the board for many issues. And I thought it was again, for women, women were adversely impacted during the pandemic for childcare issues. Now, again, the study doesn't say do these lesbian women have children or not, right. But many women who have children did not go back to work because of childcare issues. So I don't know if that.
Adrianna, I'm curious from your standpoint, do the statistics, do they surprise you at all, or it's pretty much what you would have thought?
It's not surprising. But what I will say is trans women are definitely very creative. So
right.
I know several of my trans sisters across the country who opened up organizations, opened up businesses, and they were just very intuitive, and I guess they were going to find that dollar one way or the other.
Yeah. and you're the woman, you're the female representation at the table. Does it surprise you that lesbians did worse in the survey?
It does surprise me, but like you were saying, we don't know if they had children or not. I have several lesbian friends who have families, and those women have to, are caregivers. So a lot of them had to stay home. That's not surprising.
Yeah. Well, now let's queer up religion. Did Archbishop say he is being bullied to force same-sex marriage? The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has spoken of being threatened with parliamentary action in an attempt to force same-sex marriage into the Church of England. Speaking at a Global Anglican Consultative Council, the ACC, meeting in Ghana, he also said that many members of the General Synod have dismissed his concerns about recent reforms. The Archbishop's comments come after the General Synod, the Church of England's Legislative Assembly, passed a motion to allow the blessing of same-sex couples in civil partnerships earlier this month. In his presidential address to the 18th plenary of the ACC, Mr. Welby said that rules about sexuality in the Church of England have been labeled for discussion as a result of growing atheism in the UK. He told those at the meeting held in the capital that Christian values of community and mutual responsibility have been almost eliminated in favor of individualism in the global north. Mr. Welby said, quote, "In the UK and in many parts of Europe, the majority of people now belong to no faith at all. They are not Christians, they are not Muslims, they are not pagans, they are not Jews, they are not Hindus. They do not belong." I think the lines between church and state are getting more and more. The rules are getting pushed, and I think that this is happening, not just in England, but it's happening across the, across the globe. When we use the term bullying, I think the people that are being bullied are the people that are not being accepted in the church. But I think this is part of the movement. We're starting to see it, coming into play in, the Catholic Church about accepting, our queer community in church. We're starting to see more and more churches trying to find ways to affirm our communities, because as we know that, we have someone sitting here at our table tonight who is a person of faith, and how important faith is to our community, that we want to be accepted at our churches.
I agree, but I'm kind of, I waver a little bit the other way on that. I don't necessarily know about the state telling me at my church that I should marry people. If I'm Baptist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the Bible, according to what they believe, is one thing. I don't think you should be able to come in and say, okay, we're going to have to marry gay people. That's just my personal opinion on that. I think there's other places to get married.
Am I remembering correctly, but wasn't he someone who's on our side?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is on our side.
He is on our side.
Okay, because I found this just a little bit confusing.
It's that's really a bullseye point. By the way, I'm not very far in terms of your position. Church, religious acceptance is far more important to me than the advocacy of hate that so many evangelicals propel. It's interesting to me as I listened to his comments, I saw a lot of what he said on this. I thought about Andrew Lloyd Webber, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, an Englishman. He penned a very famous song, "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," talking about Eva Perón. And I was thinking about the Archbishop of Canterbury. Don't cry me, your observation, because the number one place he's under pressure from are other bishops and leaders in his own church. The Church of England internally is the one that is creating this. So when he's talking about being bullied, he's talking about his own flock bullying him to say we must modernize, and the Archbishop is slow to that. So he's not, from his standpoint, he's not saying I'm discriminating against the LGBTQ community. I'm an advocate. I just don't want our church to marry LGBT. Now, there's a difference, and from our community, we want it all, it seems like.
We do.
And so we have the ability to understand what he's saying, and even whether we agree or we disagree, the bullying he's talking about is probably something that he's going to succumb to, because the Church of England is changing, and many American churches are changing, and the ones that are the most evangelical, they are going to say, we can survive this or we can't, because most of the bullying is going to come from inside.
Let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. Black LGBTQ plus History Month celebrates Pauli Murray as the first Black queer person on U.S. currency. This could not get any better. A Black non-binary civil rights activist, lawyer, poet, and priest will appear on a quarter. He will be the first Black queer on the U.S. currency. Her name is Pauli Murray. Murray's quarter will be issued in 2024. Others in the 2024 group are Patsy Takimoto, Mink, the first woman of color to serve in Congress, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, a Civil War era surgeon, women's rights advocate, and abolitionist, Zetkala Sa, a writer, composer, educator, and activist for Native Americans' rights, and Celia Cruz, the Cuban-American singer known as the Queen of Salsa. Mint director Ventress C. Gibson said in a press release, quote, "The women pioneered change during their lifetimes, not yielding to the status quo imparted during their lives. By honoring these pioneering women, the Mint continues to connect America through coins which are like small works of art in your pocket," end quote. Murray, born in 1910 in Baltimore, was assigned female at birth, but questioned their gender and is now understood as non-binary. They became a lawyer and activist against sexism and racism. Murray's book, States, Laws, and Race and Color, was described by Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall as the Bible for civil rights litigators. That's a lot to unpack. I think all I can say is it's about time. It's really about time.
For sure. Pauli Murray will be also in great company alongside Celia Cruz in 2024, joining other notables, including Eleanor Roosevelt, another lesbian, Maria Tallchief, I said it, Maya Angelou, Anna Mae Wong, and Sally Ride, among others.
You know, Tucker Carlson just flipped out at this moment that you call it Eleanor.
There was some tightening going on.
Right.
Well, the idea that we're expanding what our culture is now recognizing is part of the whole thing. When we say too frequently here is that representation matters. Is that, you know, kids and people that are growing up and seeing these leaders on coins and things of that nature, where it was once all white men on all of our currency, and you go to other countries and you see primarily, again, the same type of thing. I think this is groundbreaking. I hope it will continue. You know, as we know, as administrations change, those policies can certainly change, but I hope that they continue doing this.
You know, it's interesting. We throw out the phrase at Core News Tonight, as Jeff alludes to, about representation matters. We drop that like we drop a handkerchief. It is so easy for us. But as easy as it is for us to drop it, we should never forget how important it really means. And at the end of the day, representation is intentioned. And if you do not have an intention to have cis, white, older, privileged face stand up for lesbians, stand up for trans, stand up for color, black, brown, other representation and community, it's a representation that our representation is not as good as it should be. And so it's intention, and it should be. The story actually makes me sad. And the reason the story makes me sad is we're having a Black History Month. Next month we'll have a Women's History Month. We'll have an LGBT History Month in October. It makes me sad that we have to do it, not because we're just tired of it and it brings it to attention that we should, but because we must. We must have a Black History Month because we must. Because there's a very significant number of people in America that use the word woke as a weapon. And because they use the word woke as a weapon, they are able to get people to buy into a philosophy that there shouldn't be an AP history class, or that there shouldn't be representation of trans or drag queens or, and that makes me really sad. And one other thing that I think is interesting is when this happens and we have black, queer, trans representation on a quarter, it won't be able to be taught at Fort Lauderdale High School. It will not be, because it will violate the woke and LGBT implementation of what somebody in the governor's mansion wants in terms of defeating. This is a woke concept, and it is pushing sexuality on our students at Fort Lauderdale High School. Neither of which are true, but the point that we won't be able to in 2024 teach this quarter at Fort Lauderdale High School is an indication of why representation matters, because that's what we're fighting. And that's why our intention to do this, the mint to do this, is so important for all of us in the queer community.
Wouldn't I look good on a $3 bill?
Or at least a $2
bill.
Queer as.
Now we're going to queer up gay culture. Here is why RuPaul's Drag Race laws targeting drag shows are proliferating in America. Recently, RuPaul's Drag Race began its 15th season on television. Long familiar at gay bars, drag has been pushed more into the mainstream due to the popularity of RuPaul's Drag Race. Drag queen story hours also now take place in libraries across the country. Parents take children to hear books with titles like Be Who You Are, read aloud by people in drag. Supporters say the readings promote self-acceptance, diversity, and tolerance. Meanwhile, lawmakers across the country are engaged in a different sort of race, to restrict drag performances in the name of protecting children. At least 36 bills in 15 states are proposing rules that make it harder for people to perform in drag. Some states, including Texas, are seeking to classify any venue hosting a drag show as a sexually oriented business, which brings costs and restrictions on where it can be located. Arkansas is among states also trying to prevent public funds from going to drag shows. This is a reaction to the news that some cities have used taxpayer money to support Drag Queen Story Hour. New York City reportedly spent around $200,000 on it from 2018 to 2022. In Missouri, North Dakota, and Tennessee, exposing a minor to performance would become a felony, which carries jail time. You know, you really have to wonder how many of these same hypocritical lawmakers are watching RuPaul's Drag Race behind closed doors, which reminds me of the story that Tim Gunn tells about being a child and visiting his father, who worked for J. Edgar Hoover, who we all know had a proclivity for dressing up at the FBI. So do me a favor, y'all, just Google J. Edgar Hoover plus Vivian Vance for one of the funniest stories you will ever hear, I promise.
Yeah, exactly. Thoughts about drag queens?
Well, I mean, I think there was a story the other day of the Tennessee business owner that was speaking to the city commission about these bans and saying that, you know, where does it stop? Where does this stop? Are we going to now let the Tennessee Titans cheerleaders who are scantily clad, are they going to not be able to perform in front of for a football game? Are we no longer going to allow, going down the rabbit hole of what we're going to allow? And, you know, the state liquor laws, as he pointed out, already restrict nudity and sexual content as part of the liquor license rules. So therefore, this is, again, it is not about protecting children. It is about attacking LGBTQ people, as we already know. So, I mean.
Every time I think about this, I think about Misty. And every year, I think last year was the first time.
Misty Eyes.
Misty Eyes, excuse me, Misty Eyes. At least,
Yes.
Right. I remember her reading the books to the children, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing. And they were there and they were in awe. It was nothing sexual about it. Mm-hmm. And I just don't understand how people can look at that and just turn it into something ugly.
You know, hate is what they turn into. Dog whistles, exactly right. It's interesting. You know, RuPaul is at the top of this pyramid, as our story shows. She's hosting a VH1 show in 1994, I believe. It went on to VH1 as a talk show. RuPaul is a man. RuPaul is a gay man who is married. RuPaul has no interest in children. RuPaul Charles, who the character of RuPaul is, has no interest. That truth is not at what is at play here, and that's what our story is really about. In 2010, I brought RuPaul for the first time to Sawmill to perform, and when RuPaul Charles came, he was a man the entire time. He gets into drag for performance and only gets in drag when he's being paid to get into drag. He does not live as a woman, does not live in whatever definitions that we define and we understand clearly in 2023 are completely acceptable. My point is, in 2010, he came to Sawmill, performed, has had Supermodel and all of the other stuff. The show had not started yet, and came back 5 years later after the show was just the most important drag event in the world. In both instances, he is performing in red, deep red, blood red Pasco County. And while Pasco County did not like Sawmill Resort and they didn't want to acknowledge that, tens of thousands of gay people came to this location every year, RuPaul was never a question. No one in Pasco County said, there's some issue of RuPaul performing in Pasco County. It's an indication to me, and it always is a reminder to me, this story is a summary of that. In that the drag queen is not really the story here. They never thought it was a story. It was only until they realized post the Trump administration in this last 2 years, oh wait, we have a wedge that we can use that will be effective, which is exactly what we do on trans. It's exactly what we do on the sexual nature that they want to say that gay men are predatory. It's the exact nature of a book ban. It's the exact nature of claiming parental rights until a parent decides what they want to do with their trans child. It has nothing to do with reality, and we should continue to always say this has nothing to do with reality. This has to do with money and power. And Governor Ron DeSantis is after both of those. That's what's going on here.
Yeah. Now let's queer up the USA view. Huntington Beach, California votes to ban pride flags.
What makes you think it's okay to discriminate against the gay population?
It's not about discrimination, but limiting the flags on city properties, says newly elected council member Pat Burns in the PAC meeting.
The city of Huntington Beach should only fly or display on public property the American flag, POW, MIA flag, the California flag, the County of Orange flag, and the city of Huntington Beach flag.
Public speakers here on both sides.
Fly this flag because it's inclusive, but don't you dare fly the Christian flag next to it.
It's just about freedom, about to be who you truly are.
How about the Confederate flag? I'm sure we have some loyal Southerners here. I know. How about the Islamic flag? We have, we could put the Israeli flag up, the Palestinian flag up. Where does it end?
It sends a message you're not welcome. And that's not true. We're a diverse city. We are known as a diverse city, so please stand up to the values of our city, of Huntington Beach.
In an action directly aimed at banning the pride flag from being flown, the City Council of Huntington Beach, California has voted to exclusively allow government flags to be flown over City Hall. In 2021, the City Council voted unanimously to fly the pride flag in June to honor Pride Month, but are now arguing doing so is discriminatory against other groups. Councilman Pat Burns, Republican, who led the effort to ban the flag, said in a statement that the city, quote, should avoid actions that could easily or mistakenly be perceived as divisive. All are equally valued members of our community, and none are to be treated differently or discriminated against, end quote. He did not mention the pride flag specifically, but said the city should only fly the American flag, the California state flag, the POW MIA flag, the Huntington Beach city flag, and occasionally the Orange County flag. The only other previously approved flag was indeed the pride flag. According to Voice of the OC, citizens were against the change in rules during the public comment period. Many letters were also sent to the city about the issue. Of those letters, 228 supported keeping the pride flag, while only 46 supported banning it. This story, the story about the flag has also become just really confusing because it's a lot of the people on the right are having this comment that it's pledging allegiance to a different organization as opposed to, again, our community created a flag as one of the ways to represent who we are. We didn't say, like, you know, if you want to create a flag for, you know, XYZ and start and have a month around it that your flag could not be flown. No one has ever stated that, correct? The pride flag is one of our symbols. That we didn't create a flag to start a separate country or a separate, you know, a separate class of people. It's a way to show
Jeff,
representation.
I have to ask you because you've just finished. You're part of the Hollywood LGBT Council. The city of Hollywood was, I believe, the first city in Florida to fly the progressive flag, and the city is 100%. You're with Board of Governors for HRC. Hollywood has moved from a 38 at like 2013 to 100 in the HRC Equality Index. The city has moved right along in terms of its progressive approach of inclusion. How was Hollywood able to do that? How is Hollywood be able to do what Huntington Beach can't, which is not make a pride flag divisive, but inclusive for a community? How are you able to do it when they can't?
I would say there certainly was not. I'm just talking to the city a few times. There, of course, was chatter, you know, about, you know, people commenting or complaining to the city. But I think the city council realized this was the right thing to do. All of the things on the HRC Equality Index questionnaire, when we actually approached the city government about it, and we went through the questionnaire, they were like, oh, well, of course we do that. And we're like, but you have to have it written down. You have to have a policy about it. So we really worked with them on, you know, ways. It wasn't that they were, you know, discriminating against LGBTQ people, and women. I'll put in that category as well, because there was some language in some of the bylaws for the city that didn't accurately even protect women. But you know, flying the pride flag, when we asked about it, it was almost as if they were like, well, of course we'll do that. Why wouldn't we do that? It was like no one had asked. Which is why we, you know, try to tell this story as much as possible, whether it's, you know, cities across the country that are, you know, are not in a Fort Lauderdale or Miami or Wilton Manors, you know, an LGBTQ hub. Go to your city and ask them, you know, will you support representation? Because a lot of times the city they don't necessarily know that they should be doing it. And when we brought it to their attention, there was actually not a lot of comment back and forth. It was very supportive.
To that point, which is the reason why I want to ask you, because you have great representation on this subject. It is reasonable, just in reasonableness, it is reasonable to assume that the reason why Hollywood goes, a city council and mayor that are cisgendered, straight, generally white men would go, well, of course we would do that, and we embrace that. It is reasonable to assume that when you face what you face with that Republican commissioner in Huntington Beach, they don't want the recognition of community. So the rejection of the flag is that we don't want to acknowledge that community. Isn't that a reasonable conclusion here, that we're sitting here in Broward County in Hollywood going, well, that's why he would do that, because he doesn't want to acknowledge gay men and lesbians and trans community, and and again, I think for the city commission and for the mayor themselves, so many people were so proud who already were LGBT people that lived in Hollywood, that had been here for many years. People that came up to us and said, I've lived here for 20 years. I never thought we'd see a pride flag flying in Hollywood. It was so meaningful, and the city commissioners and the mayor themselves have all benefited from this exposure and the HRC index and all of the things that we've been able to kind of, again, bring the show of diversity. I do want to provide some context for especially our viewers. Orange County is like, it is in California, and it's in Southern California, but it is very distinct from Los Angeles County. It is a very conservative county. If there was a chance of somebody like Donald Trump to carry a major metropolitan county in California, Orange County would be the closest. So that's the personality that we're talking about.
Maybe like a Bay County, like Panama City, Florida, where I'm from.
I think that what Chrissy Teigen called Donald Trump in her tweet, which is now part of the congressional record, is fitting for Huntington Beach Republican Councilman Pat Burns, the pussy-ass bitch.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. every week.
I'm Evan Almanzar, and I'm with Sunsurf Youth Leadership Council, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We love Evan's representation. Well, next, Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and radical conservatives have suggested that the LGBTQ community has a secret plan, and we can only guess it's for world domination. We couldn't agree more, and we're going to tell you all about it now in our segment called The Gay Agenda.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up sports. NBA's Cam Thomas gets $40,000 fine for no homo comment. Cam Thomas of NBA's Brooklyn Nets has apologized for making an anti-gay comment after the Nets win over the Chicago Bulls Thursday night, but he's still getting a $40,000 fine. ESPN reports that Thomas and Spencer Dinwiddie, who the Nets just acquired in a trade with the Dallas Mavericks, were being interviewed by Jared Greenberg of TNT after the game at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. After the trade, Dinwiddie had said the Nets may not have gotten the best players, but they got the best looking, and the Nets needed some help in that department. When Greenberg asked Thomas about the remark, he said, "We already had good looking guys, no homo."
You had to bring the good looks because you guys were lacking that?
I seen it, but I was like, man, he's just talking for the laughs. We already had good looking dudes, no homo. But you know how it goes.
All right. I'm sure the legal office will enjoy that one. Spencer, you guys...
Woo. In The Gay Agenda, we queer up entertainment. Here is our pick for the top LGBTQ plus podcast to listen to for queer history and laughs. February is LGBTQ plus History Month in the United Kingdom. It's celebrated in October here in the United States, a time when a lot of people delve deeper into LGBTQ plus issues, and take time to learn more about our queer history. One of the best ways of catching up on LGBTQ plus matters is listening to podcasts. Get ready for a barrel of laughs in our suggestions and a whole lot of thought-provoking chat with our favorite top podcast. Here are the names. You should check out A Gay and a Non-Gay, Query with Cameron Esposito, The Dorothy Project, The Log Books, Like-Minded Friends, Out with Susie Raphael, and Some Families, and Call Me Mother.
In the gay agenda, we queer up South Florida and Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis makes political moves with Disney District takeover. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is soon to take control of Walt Disney World's self-governing district after Senate Republicans approved a bill. The bill is waiting to be signed by the governor, after which a 5-member board will be appointed to oversee the government services the district provides in the company's properties in Florida. Democratic Senator Linda Stewart has expressed concern over the bill. The bill changes the district's name from the Reedy Creek Improvement District to the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District and subjects it to various layers of state oversight. The bill leaves the district and its financial abilities and debt obligations intact, addressing a concern of surrounding governments.
In the gay agenda, we queer up hotspots. Hotshots happening out 2023 up close photographer of the year.
The LGBTQ+ community celebrates the most beautiful photographs from the 2023 Close-Up Photographer of the Year Awards. Animals are man's best friend. There are nearly 1 million species of insects. Plants are needed to save us from global warming. Fungus is fantastic. %80 of our planet's life is in the seas. Dragon's breath fire butterflies are free. You don't need a spine to have courage. A small blue planet, third rock from the sun. Imagination is the key to humanity. A new universe that can't be seen with the naked eye. Youth are the eyes of our future. Keep watching our incredible LGBTQ+ world at Hotshots happening out. Follow and subscribe to celebrate the best of us. Our nonprofit 501c3 mission from Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
In the gay agenda, we queer up travel. What to expect for queer body positivity at Big Gay Key West. Big Gay Key West, the Chub Chaser event of 2023 and the LGBTQ+ island paradise of Key West, Florida, is coming back. Get ready for it from September 13th through 18th, 2023. Big Gay Key West features exclusive access to 4 beautiful, luxurious, all-male clothing optional resorts. Island House, New Orleans House, Alexander's Guest House, and Equator Resort. You can enjoy reciprocal access to all of the guest houses, nightly happy hours, rotating pool parties at multiple resorts, bars featuring complimentary cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, 24/7 access to health club amenities at Island House, and many surprises. And since Valentine's Day season is upon us, Big Gay Key West has held off on increasing registration prices until after February 15th. Get you and your partner registered today.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotshots magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Adrianna Tender, Jeff Oliverio, and Gregg Shapiro, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. But before we end our show, we have one final story. Let's queer up the big interview. The Big Interview Valentine's Day edition. For Valentine's Day, we decided to present a different kind of interview. Recently, Queer News Tonight sat down with renowned author, editor, and columnist Rick Carlin. Rick has contributed to a variety of reputed LGBTQ plus papers in Chicago. In his new book, Last Call Chicago, 1001 LGBTQ plus friendly taverns, hangouts, and haunts, it was published last September, where he and the co-author, Saint Suki Delacroix, have documented the history of Chicago's LGBTQ bars, from speakeasies to the present day, and address the issues facing bar owners and customers. The book has received extensive coverage from The Advocate and has been featured on Chicago news television stations. The interview was exceptionally special because it was performed by Queer News Tonight anchor Gregg Shapiro, who just happens to be Rick's husband. We hope you enjoy this special Valentine's Day interview.
Well, I have the extreme honor and privilege to welcome a very special guest and to interview him about his new book. I'm going to be talking to Rick Carlin, a 1997 inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. He's a writer, a playwright, a retired school teacher, and he has the honor of being married to me. Hello, Rick. How are you?
Hi. Well, it's so nice to be here with you.
I'm glad you could be here. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the book. It's truly a labor of love. It turned out really beautifully. I've been watching it progress. So I'm wondering if you can begin by telling the viewers about the genesis of the project that became the book Last Call Chicago, published by Bradley Good Yarns.
Well, it is a history of 1001 LGBT-friendly taverns, haunts, and hangouts. And the way it came about is I was sitting with some friends. We were just sitting around having cocktails, a bunch of friends from Chicago, and they were trying to remember the name of a bar that very short-lived that was on the Chicago River, and then you would go down to it and you could get on, they had boats that would take you up and down the Chicago River. It lasted only about a summer because no one wants to go on a boat in the winter in Chicago.
Right.
And nobody could remember the name, and I came up with not only the name of that bar, but the next 3 that went into that space.
In the same location.
In the same location, which happens quite often with Chicago gay bars, and I'll go into that later. But somebody said to me, well, you should write a book about those. You know everything about the bars. And that's how it came to be.
So how long did it take to create the book from inception to completion?
Well, I say 45 years because I was the entertainment editor and for Gay Chicago magazine, which was Chicago's gay bar entertainment guide. And I also worked for a number of other gay papers in Chicago. So, and at those papers, I would write the gossip column about what was going on in the bars. So I've been going to the gay bars since the mid-1970s. Until I left Chicago about 8 years ago. And so that was the period of which we're writing about. And then when we started to write the bars, I had this idea that I would like to do it almost like the old Dameron guides, where they would give you sort of a 4-sentence capture of what the bar was like, and the address and the years it was open and things. And I approached the publisher of my memoir, Rattling Good Yarns Press, and Suki Delacroix is one of their writers. And he was also a writer in Chicago for gay papers at the time. And I thought, well, he would be the perfect person to work on with this, because we were doing basically the same job. Sometimes at sister papers like the Entertainment Guide and the newspaper, or at rival papers over 35 years.
Right.
And so I approached him about it, and we went to the publisher, and he said, well, I'm more interested in rather doing than that. Make it like a coffee table book where you discuss the bars and perhaps even expand on the history of them. So we ended up going from the very beginning of gay bars, like the 1920s, all the way to present day.
Which is how you got 1001, is that
1001. Right? Yeah, we actually had a few more that we dropped out because the publisher liked that number.
Right.
Yes.
So Last Call Chicago is a collaborative effort. As you mentioned, you co-wrote the book with Saint Suki Delacroix. How did that collaboration work? I mean, did you, how did it work? Did you discuss things? Did you fight about things?
Oh, we discussed things. We fought about things a lot. We hung up on each other a lot. And it's very interesting because we have both since retired from Chicago. I live in South Florida, and Suki lives in Palm Springs. And Suki has this incredible archive of materials that I used when I was in Chicago working on my memoir as research. He's got the back issues of almost every gay paper that ever existed in Chicago. But what we did is I came up with a list of bars, and he came up with a list of bars from his archives, and we went through them, and we kind of eliminated ones that were like, well, that wasn't really a gay bar. They just had a gay bar for a gay night once for about 3 weeks, and then they stopped.
So there had to be a certain length of time that it existed.
Not only that, not so much that it existed, but that it was LGBT welcoming, sure. And at the time, it was probably not LGBT welcoming. It was probably
gay and lesbian, right.
Gay welcoming, a trans bar,
right.
Leather bar. They were a little bit more specified. But what we did is we eliminated ones that were outside of the Cook County, which would be the Chicago area.
Right.
And then we also eliminated ones that were not primarily bars. There were a couple restaurants in there because they turned into more cocktail lounges or show lounges at night.
Right. So what do you hope for readers to get out of Last Call Chicago?
Well, I hope it brings back a lot of good memories for people. It also discusses how bars were community centers for our community. And that is the same whether you're in Chicago and discussing Chicago bars, or Cincinnati, or any larger city. They were the gathering spots for our community, and they are endangered at this point now.
Right.
There are much fewer gay bars. Chicago had more gay bars than any city in the world, more than New York, more than LA, because it has more bars. When I was growing up, there was a bar literally on every corner of every block in the city. If you lived on a city block, there was a bar on one of the 4 corners. And if you went to the next block over, there was a bar there. And I asked somebody, and they said, if you have 20 good patrons, you can make a go of it as a bar if you're just like a plain old bar. If you're going to be a show bar or a dance bar,
you need a lot more.
You need a lot more regulars.
But
for sure. 20 regulars will make a bar.
That's good to know. Let's not open a bar.
No, let's not.
So what do you think some of the things about the Chicago bars distinguish them from bars in other cities?
Well, one of the things that was very interesting is Chicago's bar liquor license history is a little different than other cities. The liquor license went to the address, not to the owner of the property. So, for example, if Joe owned a bar at 1217 Birch Street and he wanted to move his bar to 4th Avenue, he couldn't.
He'd have to apply for a new...
He'd have to apply for a new license over
there. For that address.
But 1217 Birch Avenue would keep its license. So what people did is, if they didn't make a go of a bar, they would rent out the use of their address and liquor license to somebody else who would open a bar doing business as, and then whatever new name they put on it.
Wow, okay.
So in the back of our book, we have a place called Shared Spaces. So in Chicago, there would be an address, and there'd be like 15 gay bars at the same address.
Wow, amazing. There's been a lot of discussion lately, including a New York Times article, about the disappearance of lesbian bars. What do you think Last Call Chicago tells readers about the city's history of women's bars?
Well, Chicago, again, being a big bar city, had a great lesbian bar scene. As recently as the 1980s, there were like 12 or 14 very popular, very big lesbian bars in Chicago. At this point now, there are still 2 really strong ones.
2 out of 12.
2 out of 12. There's a couple more that are smaller bars that are still going, but there are 2 that are like, and one of them recently opened and was in the New York Times.
Right.
Because a lesbian bar opening nowadays is very rare.
Right, that was Nobody's Darling.
Right. Nobody's Darling is one of the newest gay bars in Chicago. It's a lesbian bar, and it's owned by 2 black women. So it's women of color owning a bar, which is even rarer.
Right. Do you think that the men's bars have become more welcoming to women also because of the lack of women's bars?
Well, I think that's it. I also think that, part of the reason gay and lesbian bars are having problems is what those of us who have been around for a while and have fought for is the assimilation of gay people into mainstream culture. And so gay and lesbian people nowadays feel comfortable going just about anywhere.
Right.
At least in big cities. I don't know if that's the same in Two Mules, Iowa, or, somewhere in Utah, maybe different.
Right.
But in big cities, they pretty much feel comfortable going just about anywhere. And although the new political environment also changed.
Right, that'll certainly have an effect. So Last Call Chicago certainly has the potential to be an invaluable research tool. What would it mean to you if it was used in that capacity?
Well, I think it's great. The one thing we do say to researchers is much of our book is based on oral histories. So, we can check when a bar was open, we can check the addresses, we can check that information. Again, some of our bars We just have an intersection or a neighborhood where a bar was, and somebody said, well, it was open in the late 50s, and 4 or 5 people confirmed that that bar was there.
Wow.
But we don't have all the information. But our hope is that not only will this be of use to researchers of Chicago history and gay bar history in general, but also that it inspires people from other cities.
To do
I'd
their
love
own?
to see Columbus do one of these, Washington, D.C., you know, and it has to be people that know the bars in that area.
Of course, right.
And it has to be done soon because the people that know the bars in those areas,
they're aging,
that are gone, are aging, and someone needs to get their story
for sure
about the bars. Because the most entertaining part about this book are the recollections of the people about the bars in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s.
Wow.
So that's one of the best parts about it.
The book is also full of really fun graphics. There's images and there's advertisements for the various and sundry bars. Are there one or two that stand out to you as favorites?
Well, yes. Well, and I'm going to hold up the book. I know they showed it earlier, but the entire cover is, trying to get that so it's the right way.
It looks good, yeah.
The entire cover is a collage of ads from old bars that have long gone at this time. One of my favorites is for the K9 Club, which, very interesting, you know, during Prohibition, there were no gay bars. But the day after Prohibition, there were suddenly bars everywhere. They just popped up overnight.
I don't know how
they got them ready so fast. So these speakeasies just became bars. Some of them became gay bars. And the K9 Club was one of a group of bars at that time. It was the pansy craze. And it was the very effeminate men. You can see them in old movies, like old Cary Grant movies, The Butlers and things.
Pangborn, the actor.
Franklin Pang.
Right.
One of the actors who always played those roles. And the K9 Club's logo was a cartoon of very swishy pansy, like sort of posed like this. And it's like, oh, please, why should I be managed? And I just love that.
It is great. It's a great image. Is there another one?
Pardon me?
Another one that you like?
Well, another one I love is, it's on the cover. It's kind of hard to see here. It's for Jamie's. And I loved it because it's just such a typical shot of, there it is.
There you go.
Of
very 70s.
The drawings of men of that era, very Tom of Finland-esque kind of thing.
Right, tight jeans, big muscles.
Yeah, big basket.
Right.
You know, the basket's as big as his whole head.
Right. Is there a bar that closed, that you wrote about, that closed before you had a chance to visit it, that you wish you could have been?
Well, there were two, Alfie's and La Pub, which were the same era. I came out in 1976. The bicentennial year. It was my year of independence as well. And Alfie's and La Pub closed soon after I came out. I could have gone to them, but for some reason I didn't. They're both the kind of bars I would have liked.
Well, I've been to Alfie's and it was quite wonderful.
Yes. And La Pub had performers, cabaret performers, and one of them was Karen Mason, who went on to become a big Broadway star. She was in Sunset Boulevard, Mamma Mia, and Drew Robbins Broadway. And we've become very good friends. But I would have loved to have seen her in a gay bar. I saw her in straight bars when I thought I was straight.
And then, so you and St. Suki Delacroix collaborated on this book. It just recently came out. It's doing very well. You're getting lots of good press coverage, lots of good reviews. Is there the possibility of a book on which you might collaborate again in the future?
Well, actually, I did come up with one, and I want Suki and I have talked about it a little bit. I'd like to do a similar book, but based on LGBT support groups at the time.
Like social service?
Social service agency groups, but also just affinity groups like gay men's choruses And, you know, there was even a Gay Overeaters Anonymous and a gay parents group for gay people with children, which I belonged to in the early 70s, and how those served our community. And there was quite a few of those. And I'm sure we could come up with 1,001 of those.
Easily.
So that may be our next book.
Fantastic. Rick, my love, thank you so very much for doing this. I really
thank you. And I must say, you are the most handsome interviewer I've ever had. Thank you.
Pshaw. Thank you.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ